Okay, so we're going to do we're going to do Tachanan. Perek Vav is for Ashkenazim Tachanan, and what I want to do after Perek Vav is I want to do Perek Chaf Hey, which is Tachanan for Sfardim. And if people have long memories, I did do this a little over a year ago, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. And but before we start the actual Tehillah, I want to say something about the concept of Tachanun. Now, the original name for what we call Tachanun is Nefilat Apayim, which literally means to fall on your face. I feel like that describes a lot of my life. But anyways, that's something else. That's something else. That it's clear from Chumash, but the Zohar makes a tremendous point that falling on your face is a very powerful way of approaching Hashem. And we know it from Tanakh because Moshe Rabbeinu does it, Yehoshua does it. What's fascinating to me, the most famous time is at Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. However, for me, the most poignant time that you see Nefilat Apayim, you see falling on one's face, is by the Chet HaMaraglim. At the beginning of Shlach, when the spies, not really spies, the Tayarim, they come back, right? The scouts come back, and there's the bad report. The response of Yehoshua and Kalev is to tear their clothes. The response of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon is Nefilat Apayim, is to fall onto the ground. And those are two halachic reactions in Judaism, even though we only do one of them actually today. We do tear our clothing when we hear terrible news, a death of a karov, or other bad news can precipitate it also. So the reaction of Kalev and Yoshua is mourning, is a velut. And to tell you the truth, that's what we continue doing, because that day was Tisha B'Av, and we continue to have avelut on Tisha B'Av, as you all know. However, the response of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron is Nefilat Apayim, and that it's a very powerful response, but it's not mourning, it's teshuvah. And so that from Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and Yoshua by Chet HaEgel, we see that the response to something that you feel responsible for is Nefilat Apayim. And this came into, of course, into our davening and into our custom. If I can just quote from the Beit Yosef, who is Rabbi Yosef Karo, later the Mechaber, but he first wrote the Beit Yosef as a parish on the tour. He said, this tikkun, in other words, falling on your face is a tikkun, which is sort of a Kabbalistic term for this is a fixing, that somehow this can repair something which has gone bad. And you'll see that when we get to the Psalm in just a couple of minutes. This tikkun should be recited with great sincerity. Then God shows compassion to his people and forgives their sins. Happy should be the person. In other words, the response of Tachanun, when you do it with tremendous amount of hitlahavut, with passion, should be afterwards, I feel good about it, which some people say is why we repeat Ashrei. In other words, we say Tachanun, then there's a Chatzi Kaddish, and then we say Ashrei again, because we should feel that something positive happened, that the concept of falling on your face is such a powerful tikkun vehicle, okay, for helping us get into God's good graces. Then we should afterward feel something, wow, that felt good. Did you ever Did you ever feel guilty? I mean, we all do. I mean, did you ever feel guilty about something and you were just letting it, like you were covering it up and you weren't doing anything about it? Then finally, you went over to somebody and you apologized and said, wow, it was so good to get that off my chest. I feel so much better now. Lahavdil, to a certain extent, I think that's what's going on here. I think that's what the Mechaber means. I think that's what Rabbi Yosef Kara means, that all of us feel guilty about things in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and when we admit it and we say something about it, we feel better. And so you can say, Ashrei, you feel that now I'm in a better place than psychologically, emotionally, than I was just a few minutes ago. Okay? No? You disagree with me? No, comment. No, please. No, okay. No, we appreciate your comments. We do. Happy is the person who can doesn't serve his master with will and sincerity. And this makes me feel bad. And woe, okay? Woe to the person who attempts to entice the master with a distant heart and without sincerity. Okay, then he actually says that there are actually curses to such people, which makes me feel bad because the concept of Tachanun is a very beautiful concept. Okay, we're going to be talking a lot about it probably this week and the next 2 weeks. Okay, but if you do it without sincerity, without being yashar, it's bad. Because tefillah and the minhagim that we put into our tefillah are not magic or games. The things that we do in our davening, the Chazal say we're supposed to do them with tremendous devotion and passion and sincerity. And I feel so bad that you go to shul, and it happens, and I'm talking about good people here, and I feel so bad, and you see Tachanun takes like 6 seconds, and then they're popping up, and it's like, take a minute. Try, and I'm embarrassed to say I get caught up in the shvung. Everybody else, they're rushing. You don't want to be with their head down when they get to Kaddish because you want to stand for Amen Yeheshmei Rabbah. So you get caught up in the speed race, which is, and it's a real problem. We have to, and I go to a minyan with Baruch Hashem, usually it's fine, but sometimes, there's another Bal Tefillah and it just, like, oh my God. And we really have to work on these things to when Chazal put into davening certain things, whether it's holding your tzitzit for Shema, or bowing in Shmona Esrei, or in the Filat Apayim for Tachanun, all of those things should be done with devotion because they're there for us to really internalize what we're doing. And you just can't do that if you're looking at your watch. And we just have to work, mamish have to work on this issue. This concept, as a teacher, I'm always like a little embarrassed by this. This concept of saying confession, Tachanun, okay, after tefillah was invented apparently by Daniel. Now I'm embarrassed about this because nobody learned Sefer Daniel. I mean, but when you read and learn Sefer Daniel, you notice he was the first person to daven like we do. He was the first person to daven 3 times a day that we know of. No other high Shavuot Tov. He's the first person ever met. We say there's a tradition that the Avot davened. But, Avon davened Shachris and Yosef davened Mincha and Yaakov davened. There was no idea that anybody davened 3 times a day until Daniel. In Daniel, it says he davened 3 times a day. Do what else he was the first person to do that we know of? He faced Yerushalayim when he davened. To the best of our knowledge, no one had ever done that before. So we learn a lot about he also davened by a window. And there's a minhag that you should have windows in Bate Knesset. You shouldn't daven in, which was a problem when I first moved to Efrat. I mean, it was like, it was pretty primitive. We didn't have phones. We didn't have, it's like we used to go to Yerushalayim just to make phone calls. It was like nothing. But one of the things we didn't have is Beit Knesset, but they had miklatim. We were davening in the bomb shelters underground. I mean, which is, Mima'amakim kratich Hashem, from out of the depths we call to Hashem, but you're supposed to have windows too. So, and the minutes actually had 12 windows. Anybody know why 12 windows? No. I mean, yes and no. You'll see why yes and no. But really, no. It's the same reason that there are 12 bakashot in the middle of Shemona Esrei, that we believe that we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for 12 different areas of things. So in other words, each one represents a different conduit to Shemayim for one of our major areas of need. Okay? And each one of the tribes also provides one of those items. So in other words, wealth comes from Yosef, power comes from Yehuda. In other words, the things that we ask for come from. That's why we need all 12 tribes. And by the way, the months do it too. The months also, for each month, provide something that we need. But there are 12 basic needs. Okay? But he's the first person to do that. And what else was he the first person to do that we know of? Ve'etna et panai el Hashem Elokim, and I placed my face towards the Lord my God, levakesh tefillah v'tachanunim. So what happened was he davened and then said tachanun. And this is the first person to do that's Perek Tet, that's chapter 9, verse 3 of Daniel. And the next pasuk says, Ve'et palala la Hashem ve'et vada. And I pray to God and then I confess. He invented, I don't know if he invented, but he's the first person who recorded so many, he's the source for so many of our minhagim vis-a-vis tefillah. It's like embarrassing that we don't learn it. Maybe I should turn off the tape for a second. Anybody know why we don't learn it?
It's in Aramaic.
That's a good reason. That's true. Half of it, 60% of it is in Aramaic. That's a good reason.
It talks about the end of the world.
Yeah, and it was used by the Christians to support a lot of their ideas. So it's like over the years, the rabbis, that's why I'm embarrassed as a teacher, the rabbis didn't want to get involved in those theological issues. The Aramaic, yeah, that's also a problem. I can't dismiss the fact that there's a lot of Aramaic in it. But the real reason, I think, was they just didn't want to get involved in those theological discussions. And so they just don't read it. It's like...
We learned it's women's sharing and sharing.
Good for you. Because there's a lot of stuff you just scratch your head, you don't get. That's also true. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of important stuff. Daniel was a major character, and it's a shame that he gets short shrift for this for this reason. Okay, some of the stories are so powerful. But anyways, we get this from him. What happened was, everybody agreed, both in the Gemara, in the Chumash, then in the Gemara, then in the Zohar, then in the halachic places like the Mechaber and people since then, they agreed that it's a very powerful tikkun or tool, spiritual tool, to fall on your face. However, at some point in time, the rabbis got reticent about doing it. So we only fall on our faces once a year. That's on Yom Kippur. Even on Rosh Hashanah, those people that bow at Rosh Hashanah, they don't put their face on the floor. There's no afilat apayim. You don't actually put your face on the floor, except on Yom Kippur, okay? And by the way, for those of you that do it, those people with hip replacement problems, whatever, don't do it. Okay, don't do it. But if you're still in good shape from the waist down, okay, and you can do it. You should keep your head on the ground until you say the words Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Toli Olam Ved. The Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik, very makbid. You should say the words, some people just touch their head and get right up. No, you're supposed to say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam V'Ed, because putting your face on the ground was a response to hearing Shem Hashem from the Kohen Gadol. I should apologize. This is not a halacha share. I don't know why I'm saying. Okay, we have to get back to the psalm, but a little bit more on the halacha. What happened was, over the years, Chazal were concerned about avodah zarah and other customs creeping into Judaism. So as time went on, they got more and more circumspect about when you can actually touch your head to the ground. And we only do it on Yom Kippur as a recreation of what happened in the Beit HaMikdash. And even then, you can't do it on a stone floor, because it'll look chalila like it's avodah zarah, okay? So you have to put something on, especially here in Eretz Yisrael. In America, where there's a carpeted floor, it's less of a problem. But here in Eretz Yisrael, where generally it's the stone floors, the bare floors, it's a problem. Remember linoleum? You can probably put your head on. Remember linoleum? Anyway, okay. So what happens is you can put your face on that. So but the stone here is like a process. You have to make sure you put something down. But they stopped us doing it on a regular basis. So they replaced putting your head on the floor with putting your head on your arm. Okay? And the general minhag is you put your head on your left arm unless there are tefillin there. That's the minhag. You put your head on your left arm unless there are tefillin there, which happens, for some, for righties in the morning. But generally, it's supposed, and that's because of the proximity to the heart. Okay, that even though the heart probably is really in the middle, but the way it beats, it feels like it's on the left side. So that it's supposed to be heart sync, right? It's supposed to have to do with your emotions and your heart, and that's why you should do it that way. Then the rabbis got further reticent. We only do nefilat apayim. We only put our head down on our arm if there's a Sefer Torah present, because with the Sefer Torah present, we feel that we are demonstrating that we're doing it in the presence of Hashem. If there isn't a Sefer Torah present, you just sit down, but you don't put your head all the way down on your arm unless you're in Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, we're always in the presence of Hashem, so that in Yerushalayim, everybody does it, except there's an argument between Tukachinsky, Oliver Shalom, and Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Oliver Shalom, that they argue, we're talking about only a few decades ago, over when they say Yerushalayim, does that mean Iratika or the entire city? And Reb Shlomo Zalman said it's just the old city. But most people, I don't know about most people. I tend to hang out in the Dati Le'umi crowd. Most of my Zionist friends do it for all of Yerushalayim. I should be careful. I haven't done a study. How many people? Anyways, so that's what we do. In Yerushalayim, generally speaking, you do Nefilat Apayim, even if there isn't a Sefer Torah present, because you're in Yerushalayim and therefore in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, all of that just brings us to the psalm itself, almost. We still have one more thing to do before we get to the psalm, and look at the bottom of the page, underneath the psalm. Vayomer David El Gad. That's not from Psalm 6. As you can see, I have Pasuk Yudalid there. It's from the end of Shmuel Bet. Anybody know what story was going on here? When David speaks to the prophet Gad, David does tshuva in front of prophets twice, once in front of Natan and here in front of Gad. Anybody know what story this was? Why David HaMelech was so, I'm sorry? No, that was the previous one. This is the end of Shmuel Bet. At the beginning of Shmuel Bet, it's to Natan and it's Bathsheba. This was over the census. At the end of his life, he counted the Jews. And there was a magefa, and what happened was V'yomer David El Gad. So David speaking to the Navi, Tsar li ma'od. I really feel afflicted over this. This is really bothering me. Niplana biyad Hashem ki rabim rachamav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, based on the Navi, gave David HaMelech options for how the nation should be punished. And one of the punishments was another nation should come attack them. And the other punishment was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring a magefa, should bring some sort of pestilence, a coronavirus. I don't know what. It was, okay? And so what happened was, he says, Niplana biyad Hashem. I'd rather that the punishment be meted out by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because ki rabim rachamav, as it's going on, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu notices his people suffering, his children suffering. Under those circumstances, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be compassionate. Ubiyad adam ela pola. I never want to fall into the hands of humans. I don't trust people. I don't trust when people get power, they get just more and more corrupt. I mean, I just don't know who you can vote for anymore, because they're all so corrupt. I mean, I don't know. America, Israel. I mean, it's like, who do you vote for? It's like almost you can close your eyes, Okay, but don't put me into the hands of people. Put me in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so this is what we say before we say Tachana. Okay, and the words that we're really poignant are Niplana biyad. So in other words, we're putting our head on our hand. So Niplana, I'm symbolizing falling into the hand, not my own hand and arm, but into the arm of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it symbolizes. And this became the custom at the beginning of the 1600s. The first record we have of this custom is from the Shloh, Rabbi Yeshayahu Horowitz, Halevi. If anybody knows the Boston Rabbi family, he was the founder of that line, the Horowitz family, that becomes other Hasidim too, but the most famous of the Bostoner. But anyways, so he's the first person to record this, which brought up a controversy in the 18th century. In the 1700s, the Vilna Gaon was trying to roll back a lot of the customs that had come in the late 1500s, early 1600s by the Mekubalim. He said they're wonderful ideas, but we should go to a more pristine version of Judaism. And a lot of things they added, the Vilna Gaon took out. The Vilna Gaon took this out. So in other words, a lot of people, especially here in Yerushalayim, because a lot of people here follow Nusach HaGra, don't say that pasuk. But we do say the next pasuk, okay? Which is not a pasuk, it's a statement from Chazal. And this is how I start one personal note. As I was becoming religious in high school, I started going to shul, and it was very hard to keep up. And so I had a couple of friends, who knew a lot more than I did, and they would continually tell me the customs of the Vilna Gaon. Now, the customs of the Vilna Gaon were very popular in Boston because of Rabbi Soloveitchik. So a lot of these guys went to Maimonides, and they knew a lot of the customs of the Lithuanian brisker, right? People, and I quickly grabbed them all because they're shorter. And I was having so much trouble keeping up with the davening, so that to say less was always an advantage. And so, so that's why I initially started keeping Nusach HaGra. And then as time went on, it became really my Nusach. And then when you come and live in Yerushalayim, it is the standard Nusach for Ashkenazim. So it just helped me a lot when I was trying to keep up with davening, unsuccessfully. But okay, I did my best. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hopefully. But this next line, we know from Reb Amram Gaon, when he wrote the first Siddur, which now we're going back to the 9th century, this line was inserted, and it said, this is the line. We don't know who wrote it, but it's either late Talmudic, it's not in the Gemara, it's either late Talmudic or early Gaonic, so it's very old. Rachum v'chanun chatati lefanecha. Oh, compassionate one, O gracious one, I have sinned before you. Rachamim is compassion. Chen is grace, right? So, O compassionate one, O gracious one, I have sinned before you. Hashem malei rachamim. God, you are full of, again, rachamim, compassion. Rachem alai. Have compassion upon me, v'kabel tachanunai, and accept my supplication. Supplication is a request for something that you don't deserve. Root of it, chen, I'm asking for grace. Grace means a favor or a gift without reason. So this is why we call it tachanun. Until this, in the Gemara, they always referred to this tefillah as nefilat apayim, the falling on your face. But from the point that this got inserted, it says tachanunai, we call it tachanun. Now, it's turning from a halacha class into a history class. We'll get to the psukim in a second. But what happens is, after this, he says, then say your supplication. He doesn't say what psalm to say. There's a blank in the manuscripts. So that's why different areas said different psalms for tachanun. Most Ashkenazim say Vav, which is the one we're going to do today. Most Sfardim and Chabad say Chafhei, Psalm 25. There was no way I was going to say Psalm 25 because it's twice the length of Vav. Remember, I was always trying to keep it short. Okay, so Vav has become the standard Ashkenazic, and Chafhei has become. There are some other customs floating around. There are some people that say Nun Aleph, which is a beautiful psalm that we did before Yom Kippur about tshuva. I mean, there are beautiful psalms about tshuva that are also appropriate. And since neither the Gemara nor the Gaonim dictated, there is room for people to choose what psalm to say. I had a friend of mine who actually was Rabbi, who didn't like this psalm. He found the psalm too depressing. And he said, I don't want to say it. I said, okay, say another one. He said, what are you talking about? And so I went through this whole thing with him. And so he started saying Chafhei, which is, okay, we'll compare them soon, okay? But this is our minhag, and this is, okay, so this is what we do. Okay, finally, we can actually start the psalm. But when the Mekubalim said to quote that verse, V'yomer David el Gad, they were telling us the context of the poem. The context of the poem was David HaMelech was doing tshuva for a very specific sin. And we are therefore using this psalm to mean tshuva, which you're going to see in a minute is a problem. There's a problem. And it begins with an amazing verse, actually. Lamanatseach b'neginot, okay, to the conductor, to the musician, to the head musician, b'neginot, with music, a niggin. Okay? Al hashminit, that is played on the eight string harp or lyre. Okay, the normative lyre or harp, whatever the right word is, in the Beit HaMikdash had 7 strings. So the 8th string was the lyre that's going to be played when Mashiach comes. Mizmor David, a song of David. What a happy introduction. This is a song. This is a musical song that has to do with Geula, and then you start to read it, and it's so depressing. It's like they don't seem to go together. It's almost like we don't say this superscript. Now, when we start, after we say Rachum v'Chanun, we say Hashem al pa'pech tochei. We go straight to pasuk bet. We don't say pasuk aleph. We don't say the superscript. But the question is, why is such an uplifting superscript connected to such a depressing Tehillah poem, psalm? I think the answer is really simpler than you might imagine. We really believe that what brings the joy and the happiness and the geula is tshuva. And this idea sort of gets actually mentioned in the last pasuk, in pasuk Yud Aleph, about return. In other words, yes, David HaMelech is saying this, is reciting this, is writing this amazingly beautiful poem, the dark place. But getting out of the dark place is what geula is all about. And how do you get out of the dark place? Well, it's a combination of davening to Hashem and doing tshuva. So it's inspirational, really. Please.
Here it mentions why it's
Here is Hirsch, by the way. Okay, please.
Yes. It is explained that the harp ordinarily used in the temple had only seven strings, while the one intended for the Messianic era had 8, and the instruments representing the form the world will take in the future had 10 strings.
Right, in Olam Haba, they had the 10 representing that. It's funny that he mentions that, because I don't think of Rav Hirsch as a Kabbalist. I know the 7 and 8, that's very, and he loves the numbers, and I know that. He's very much into, like the Maharal, numbers have significance. But I'm surprised he mentions the 10, because so we've got the regular 7, Yemot HaMashiach, Geula 8, Olam Haba 10. Why is Olam Haba 10? Because 10 represents the completion of the Sfirot. See, now in our world we have 7 Sfirot. That's the 7 that we play. The 7 Sfirot are 7 character traits of the 7 giants, right? Chesed is Avraham, Gevura is Yitzchak. We do it. That's 7. So that's going on right now. Okay, then we get to Geula, something's been added. So that's 8. Okay, beyond the natural is 8. And in Olam Haba, we combine, there are 3 Sfirot in heaven. And so those 3 in heaven get connected to the 7 down here, so that the harp will then have 10. What are the 3 in heaven? You know them, just don't realize it. Chachma, Bina, Dat. In other words, the 7, Lubavitch, right? What have you got to look for in Olam Haba? Lubavitch. But anyways, so what happens is, okay, could be worse. So what happens is, the 7 down here have to do with character development. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, right? The 3 in heaven we're beyond character development, and it's cognitive. It's into totally intellectual, because we're not going to have physical form. So the 3, but we're going to get all 10. When we go to Olam Haba. So that's why the harp, which I wasn't going to mention, okay, is, and I'm surprised that Hirsch mentions it. The German Jews had a very interesting relationship with Kabbalah. The German Jews were, if you go back to before, there weren't that many German Jews before Shabtai Tzvi in 1666. Kabbalah was rife in Germany, in Ashkenaz, because a lot of the Ashkenazic Jews at that point were really Sephardim, who had filtered in during the 1600s from the Netherlands. The Spanish Portuguese came into Germany because Germany had become Judenrein after the Black Plague. All the Jews had moved all the way to the east. And so the first Jews back in Germany, starting in the 1500s and growing in the 1600s, were Sephardim. And they loved Kabbalah. But with Shabtai Tzvi in 1666, the German Rabbanim, more than any other Rabbanim in Europe, took a U-turn and came out against learning Kabbalah. That's where that idea, you have to be 40 to learn Kabbalah. And by the way, some German shuls stopped saying Brich Shmei when they took out the Sefer Torah. In some community, I don't remember which ones right now, I have to look up, because it's Kabbalistic. In Holland also, because they took on some of the German customs, but it started with some German communities. I don't remember which ones. It wasn't Frankfurt. And so, in other words, there was still a love intellectually of Kabbalah, but there was often a fear of Kabbalah in Germany, and you see it. And that's why I'm surprised that her said it. I apologize. What do you want to say? Please.
I wanted to say, which verse was it that was taken out?
No, the entire paragraph of Brich Shemay. After you say Vayehi ben Soa Haron, then there's an Aramaic paragraph after that from the Zohar. And there were German communities that stopped saying that because they were afraid of having Kabbalah in the shul.
In Kibbutz Yavne, which is German,
Sure.
they never said it.
Oh, it's whatever community they took the custom from. I don't remember. I could check which. There are two versions of the Rudelheim. One has it, one doesn't.
Really?
Yeah, Rudelheim is like the famous German Siddur. Okay, we're not making much progress today. But anyways, so what happens is this verse is very upbeat, and it's like almost warning you, even though we're going to talk about some really depressing stuff in the next couple of verses, it's going to turn out okay. It's almost like telling you, don't worry. Yes, we're going through some tough times, but it's going to be okay. You know, when in 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, I was 12 years old, and I was really afraid. My father made a joke. My father said, when Kennedy was on TV, I was watching it on TV, and it looked like I was already afraid of nuclear war. I mean, some of you may remember we used to hide under the desks as if there was. I'm sorry.
More than 12, we remember.
But you may not have been in school to do. I don't know if you had to hide under your desk. What a stupid thing to do! Like the desk is going to save me from an A bomb, But it was scary. It was a very scary time. And then he comes on TV and he shows a map, and the map has these circles. Okay, so one of the circles showing how far the missiles in Cuba could go goes right through Boston, where I'm living. Is oh my God. It's like we're on the fire. I was very scared. My father, Oliver Shalom, God bless him, turns to my mother and he says, "By the way, where'd you put my uniform? They may need me." And it's like that made it even worse, right? I was really like, oh no. My father was in the Navy, World War II. But what happened? And he was joking, but I was scared. And my mother says to me, and she said, in 1941. When Pearl Harbor took place, I was afraid, and I remember, listening to, Roosevelt and everything, and she mentioned somebody, I don't remember who it was, that she said, yes, we're going to go through a dark time, but America is very strong, and we're going to come out of this okay. And so my mother told me that in 1962. And it made me feel better. Yes, we may be going through a dark time, but America's strong. We're going to pull through that. And I told that to my students in 2001 when there was 9/11. And it's like, that idea is very powerful. And that's what David HaMelech is doing. Yes, I have gone through dark times, but it's going to be okay. And I think it's very important that we believe that. It's very important that we believe that. Otherwise, we wouldn't make it through. But and it's going to be the first few psukim are very dark. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay, pasuk bet. Hashem. I'm sorry.
All right, we're getting there.
we're finally in the text of Tachanun. Okay, only took 40 minutes. Okay, I can't believe I did. Okay, anyways, Hashem. Now remember, Hashem is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Rachamim, right? That's the compassionate name for Hashem. Okay, Hashem, al ba'apecha tochicheni, ve'al b'chamatcha tiasreni. This is one of those sentences you need a thesaurus. Af and chema both mean anger. Tochacha and musar both mean chastisement. So and again, it's the Malbim to the rescue. The Malbim Meir Leibish Ben Yechiel Michal, tells us there's no such things as synonyms in biblical Hebrew. So David HaMelech is using similar language, but telling us two different ideas. Af and chema are different kinds of anger. Af, like your nose, is clear anger. Chema is, like its word heat, is heated inner anger, which is much more dangerous. You want to know who's angry at you. It's much, and by the way, there are many people who get angry quickly, but it goes away quickly. That's off. The chema are those people where they don't show it, but it's inside and it stays and festers and grows for over time. That's much more dangerous. So the first one is tochicheni tochacha, according to the Malbim, is much more gentle chastisement. Tochacha means I'm doing it for, I know something bad's going to happen. I know you're going to get punished, but I'm doing it for your own good, and it's going to be okay. As opposed to chema is this inner anger, which can be much longer lived, and yisurin, means, like punishments, like pain. Yisurin literally means suffering, okay? So he's saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm asking you not to chastise me and not to give me pain with anger or with wrath. Thank you. I needed the thesaurus, right? Don't do it. In front of me, my translations are anger and rage. Rage. Okay, is the translation in front of me? Okay. No, I don't. I like wrath better because it's inside. Rage is sort of on the out. It's hard to keep rage in. Rage is on the outside. Okay, rage is like the Incredible Hulk. You're not going to like me when I'm angry. Rage is all like comes out. Oh, whatever. But he's saying in this puzzle, he says, don't do it with anger. Don't do it with wrath or rage or whatever other term you want to use. I deserve to be punished, but I don't want you to do it with anger. In other words, Hashem, do it in a measured way. David HaMelech isn't saying, don't punish me at all. He's saying, I need some musar, some tochacha. I need some chastisement from you. But please, Hashem, be as gentle as you can with it. Make this as humane, if I can use that word vis-a-vis Hashem, make this as gentle a punishment as possible. I don't know how much I can take. And he's begging Hashem, but he's not saying I don't deserve it. He's not saying he's innocent. David HaMelech, and especially when you add that line, according to the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, according to the Shlah, that it's during the sin when he counted the Jews. He did sin. I do deserve something, but please, Hashem, do it in as compassionate a way as possible.
This was the sin when he did what?
When he counted the Jews. He conducted a census toward the end of his life, and there was no reason for that census. Earlier in his career, he did a census because he had to know how many soldiers he had, like the census in the desert or when the Jews came into Israel. That was okay. That was a purpose. To count the Jews in a time of peace just to feel good about how many Jews there were was sort of like ga'ava, a sort of bit of vanity. That was considered a terrible sin. We don't count Jews for no reason. There's got to be a good reason for counting Jews.
So maybe that's why some people, they say, how many grandchildren have you?
No, that's a little bit different. This is why when you're counting to see if there's a minion, you say, Hoshea esamecha vorachet nachlasecha. Unless you're in Chabad, then they need 16 for a minion. Because they go Hoshea et amecha uvorachet nachlasecha ureim. So they need 16. It's a problem. Okay, but Sorry, I couldn't. I couldn't resist. That was terrible. Okay. Anyway. But no, you're right, because that's, and I want you to know, we had this kid used to come up when I was leading tours with kids. With adults, I didn't care so much, but with kids, and there'd always be somebody on the bus who say not one, not two, and I say, wait a minute, we're counting these kids because we don't want to lose any. You can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can count them straight. There's a very good reason for counting these kids right now. So I would just count you because you just wanted to get the number, and because Halili, you didn't want to, and we sometimes did lose a couple. I mean, we'd find them, but I mean, they weren't always on the bus. Quick, check the ladies' room. That was usually where they were. Okay. Gimel. Chaneni. Now again, tachanun. Chaneni, show me grace. I deserve to be punished. That's what we said in Pasuk Aleph. And here in Pasuk Bet, he's saying, I'm asking for a favor. Grace equals favor. Okay? It's too bad. It's like the Christians took the word grace. A lot of Jews don't like to use the word grace in English because it seems to have Christian connotations. So you can say favor. Okay? Chaneni, show me favor. I'm asking for a favor. Ki umlau ani. I'm in a bad place. Now, this word umlau is like a hard word. It can mean grief. It can mean suffering. It can mean, what's my translation here? Here it says feeble. What? Yeah, I'm a nebuch right now. I'm a nebuch. Pessy, how does the translation here?
He says here that umlau is derived from mem lamed, to crack, to bend, thus bow down with the.
I'm cracked, he's saying. But what's his translation, though?
Well, let's see now.
Mine is feeble.
Feeble, that's what I have. I have feeble. Weak. Okay? I'm just curious. Sometimes
Bow down.
bowed, I'm broken, sort of, yeah. Okay? Well, it's a fascinating word. But it can be a positive word. Mem lamed lamed means to express yourself. Mi yimalel gevurot Israel. Okay? Yimalel. Mem lamed means to express yourself. So ki umlau, I am in a very bad place, but I am expressing it. In other words, I'm grief-stricken. But when you're umlau, you're not quiet about it. You are milalel. You're talking about it. You're describing it, discussing it, bringing it out. And that's very much what's going on here. Ki umlau. And then comes the word that makes this poem controversial. Rifa'eni Hashem, ki nivhalu atzamai. Cure me, heal me, because my bones are, I'm going to say shaken. You can say shattered. The root, confusion, okay? Right? Shaken up. It's okay. This word is important in our poem. It's going to be in the next pasuk, and it's going to be in the last pasuk. We're not going to get the last pasuk till next week. But this word, the idea is to be in a situation where you feel totally out of control. And when he's saying my bones are in that case, because normally what do bones give you? Rigidity. They give you stability. They give you, bones are what usually give you, I can stand up, I can do it, right? Okay. So he's saying my bones, the thing that's supposed to give me stability are shaken. Okay. It's a very powerful expression. But here comes the controversy. A lot of commentaries don't believe that David HaMelech was talking about sinning in this poem. He was talking about being very, very sick. And that's what's coming up. That's what's happening here, and that's what's coming up. He's recognizing from the first verse that becoming sick was because of himself. In other words, I have nobody to blame but myself, okay? But it may not be talking about a sin according to certain commentaries. According to other commentaries, and based on a midrash, after the situation with the census, David HaMelech got very, very ill. And so he was ill, and the illness was because of the sin. Other commentaries say, no. We can go to Sefer Yeshayahu, which of course is after King David. We can go to Sefer Yeshayahu and see the word refuah is often used as a request for God to accept our tshuva. And it's used as a metaphor for teshuvah. And therefore, we really are talking about a sin situation. But it does bring up a controversy. Is this a poem for illness or a poem for tshuva? We, especially Ashkenazim, have decided it's about tshuva. It's about tshuva. But we get the confusion, right, from the Rifa'ini. Heal me. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepting our tshuva and granting us slicha is also a refuah. We believe that very powerfully, and it's said specifically by, by Yeshayahu. Okay, Dalit. V'nafshi nivhala ma'od. First, it's my bones that are shaken. Now it's my soul. Now, is the problem that is being expressed by an inability of my bones to help me stand up or to have stability, to function, affects me all the way down to the source of my life, which is my nefesh. Of course, it's always an argument when David HaMelech uses the word nefesh. Does he mean the immortal part of him, or does he mean the nefesh chaya, the life force within him? And you can make a case for either position. I like to think that when we say nefesh, we're talking about the life force. And it's not the immortal part of him, which is the neshama, but the life force. But you can get they're unfortunate to go both ways on what we're talking about when we say the word nefesh. Nafshi nivala ma'od. My very life force or my very soul is shaken greatly, is just battered. And what's interesting is, so I have, the first translation I have for nivala is shudder, and the second one is terrified, which is interesting. I think there should be a closer correlation with your translations for the term nivala. They're both right. But I mean, when I'm reading the English, I wouldn't recognize that the same Hebrew word was being used. I like the Hebrew to be closer to I like the English to be closer to the Hebrew, if possible. What are the terms that you have?
He says stricken.
Stricken, yeah. For both?
Yeah. He says, my soul above all is stricken.
But go back to the previous verse. What happened to his bones? Are his bones stricken? Afflicted. So, so when you're reading that, you don't know that the Hebrew is the same. What can you do? I mean, translation's always a problem, but here, I don't think if you don't use a similar term, you're missing. And what happens is, the term comes back in Pasuk Yud Aleph. In other words, David HaMelech really liked that term for, that my whole being is shaken up. Right, has lost its stability. This is very powerful. And if you don't repeat the verb, then you've missed it. Okay. So nashi nivala ma'od va'ata Hashem ad matai. And now, and you, God, everybody agrees you pronounce it ata, not at. Some people make a comment that he was that sometimes when a HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in rachamim mode, it's permissible to use a feminine, but everybody, because we know the attribute of rachamim comes from the feminine side of humanity, because the term rachamim comes from the term rechem, which means the womb. In other words, rachamim really means the way a mother feels for her child. That's what the term means. That's the paradigm for biblical compassion. By the way, that image, the mother-child image, of course, has been borrowed, into the Mary idiom in Christianity. But that was just a reworking. That whole thing was stolen from who was Mary replacing in Christianity? Who was she replacing? Rachel. Rachel is the Baalat HaRachamim. And that's one of the reasons that they say that even though Yeshu lived in Nazareth, right? He was born in Beit Lechem, but that's not the real reason was to identify Mary with Rachel. They were stealing that. So whenever you see, a Pietà, you see the image of Mary, don't think Mary, think Rachel. It's all about Rachel. Okay? So that's why it might be a feminine spelling here. Other people say that this last phrase wasn't addressed to God, it was addressed to a malach, to the malach Raphael, who comes down to cure people. But whatever, I don't like that particular shot, but that exists. Va'ata Hashem ad matai. I know, but doesn't it have in parentheses afterwards v'ata? Doesn't give the does it have a comments under the ata? We pronounce it ata, even though it's spelled at. Yeah, I have ata. That's right. That's what they usually do. But you can do it just by putting the comments under the top. So it's pronounced ata, even though it's spelled at. And like every Korean Ketiv, it's teaching you two ideas simultaneously. He's addressing Hashem, but Hashem is in feminine mode. It's addressing the feminine side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay? Right, exactly. Well, that may be a grammatical issue. But what is David HaMelech asking when he says ad matai? Until when? Until when what? Am I going to suffer? Until when am I going to have to wait for my prayers to be answered? Until when am I going to feel this terrible burden if the poem is really talking about sin? How long will I have to carry this burden of guilt? So the question is, what ad matai gets translated based upon how you are viewing the true topic of the Tehillah. Excuse me. So that's what's going to dictate how you deal with that. Until when? Until when what? Well, it might be the disease. The next two verses, which I was hoping to get to today, but we're not going to. Okay, but the next word in the beginning of Hey, I'm just gonna. We're running out of time. But Hey starts with Shuva, and we're going to return to Shuva at the end. So return again gets us into the Teshuva, mode. Hashem chaltza nafshi. This chaltza nafshi, you got to hold this idea strongly, because this is one of those words that when you jumble the letters, I don't know if people like those letter jumbles, words. Some people love those word games. Well, this is for those people. And it's here in Hey, and it all comes back again in Yud Aleph. We're going to return to this concept. In Hebrew, it's a beautiful idea that sometimes the problem and the solution are in the same letters. Lachatz and chalitza, chalatz, are the opposite. Lachatz is the problem. Chalatz is the solution. I'm under pressure. Chalatz means to relieve pressure. This idea is unbelievably important. It's going to come back in Yud Aleph, because the solution to the problem is often in the problem. If you look at the problem differently, we're going to talk more about this next week. We're going to talk, and we're going to come up with more and more examples. Oneg, Naga. It's like there's a whole bunch of them. Shabbat, Boshet. We're going to come, and that's the one that's in Yud Aleph. We're going to come to a lot of them. And that's like a sub-theme in the poem. And David HaMelech is giving us a hint that to actually get out of this problem, I have to face this problem. And only then can I find the key to get out of my present state of suffering. And next week we'll get out of the suffering. Okay, sorry, you're going to spend the week, just, okay, do your best. Do your best. Okay, Shavua Tov, everybody.
It's like in medicine.
Medicine, yes,
The antidote
is often, right.